click the start button. Nothing's happening.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take on your reality is unadjusted.
Please remember to mute the YouTube feed so you don't get feedback. That's a good start. Schoolboy error on the super low budget production values. It still makes a schoolboy error. Hello. Welcome, folks. Sorry about that. I'd left the volume. Oh, hopefully that's not making too much crazy noise. I'd left the volume on my YouTube page, so apologies for that. Oh, yeah, shut that hairy face up. Yeah. So you might have got a bit of feedback on that, so apologies for that. I'll sort out my screen. I've been running late again, as per usual. Do the pop-out chat so I can read the chat properly. And we'll get there eventually. We were so distracted because we were happily chatting about mushies, because it is currently mushroom season. I need to share the page round as well. While we still got the ability to make use of Google Plus, the Google Plus social media platform, I do still keep sharing stuff onto there for now until they finally do shut it down or whatever it is they're planning to do with it. Yeah, that G Plus platform might disappear soon. So if you if you've got a G Plus page and you've connected in with the Heads Up Hangout page, that might disappear soon enough, because Google have recently announced that they will be giving up on the G Plus platform and slowly shutting it down. So yeah, anyway, I shared it round anyway now. And sort my pages out. I had just been listening while we were chatting. We were listening to the Raconteur News. They're currently still on at the moment. I think broadcasting still at the moment, chatting with Alan Vinnicombe, the armchair detective. Yeah, they're still going. I can see their chat still progressing. So I only managed to listen to about half of it, and it sounded like there was a lot of good conversation. So worth checking out. If you haven't checked them out before, check out Raconteur News. They have a lot of different guests on, and the guys they know a fair bit, and they've got a lot of good experience of the way the world works, stuff like that. And yeah, they have a good variety of guests on. So, you know, I think they do a really good job of providing, you know, a voice for people to talk about various topics that often don't get mentioned by the mainstream or get avoided or ignored, all that usual kind of stuff of why we're doing this kind of thing. So, let me find my notes yet before we get any further, so I can at least have some idea of what I'm doing, because otherwise I just got no idea. If I don't make notes, I got no idea about what's happening in the future. Sorry, being silly already. I will talk about why the current title this week and the subtitle, and I will hopefully make them make some sense for you as to why I was thinking about this stuff and how it correlates to various things going on at the moment, and hopefully point a little bit at the bigger picture rather than the minutiae, the details of the distractions. And that could give a good link potentially to why the subtitle. But I'll come back to that. If you hadn't noticed, there's been various things happening this year, and as the year has progressed, it's become I don't want to say extreme, but it's certainly increased. It has incremented the amount of these kind of things that have been happening. Maybe, hopefully, you might have figured out what I'm referring to by the title. I thought it was quite interesting that it only takes the change of one letter at the end of that little sentence. You know, the last word isn't quite finished. You know, it's not a complete word in the English language. She, well, as far as I know, it's not. So grab me a dictionary and have a mooch through, just in case. You never know. But as far as I know, SHI is not a word. So I deliberately left it with one letter missing at the end and put a question mark instead. And more so in the, you know, I'm not deliberately trying to stretch out into now using symbols as well to make up my crazy language contortions. You know, it's sort of like, I thought, you know, it could be a little bit like cheating if I start bringing in alphanumeric, symbolic stuff into it as well. That would give me even more scope to, you know, create strange combinations to convey a meaning. But no, I was aware of that potentiality, but I did find it interesting. It was part of what sparked my interest in writing the title like that, was the fact that in that setting, in that meaning, in the way I've used it, the question mark could be a P, the letter P, or it could be a letter T. If you squint your eyes a little bit, it's a bit difficult to tell because of the shapes of it. You know, is it a P or is it a T? If you're somebody who has affected eyesight as well, you know, if you saw it at a distance, maybe you wouldn't be quite sure if it's a question mark or a P or a T. And hopefully that'll give you some idea of what I was trying to say with the current title of this particular episode. And I forgot to say, yeah, welcome back, folks. It's Excalibre once again on this Moon Day evening, sounding a signal to cut through the noise of this crazy circus show. I keep getting little bits of lyrics from War of the Worlds recently popping out from things that people have said. But let's see, wait for the Martians to land and see what comes of that. If you see a green flash coming from Mars, start getting on the radio and letting everybody know. First of all, I say a quick hi, hello to everyone in the chat room. Thanks for joining us. Ron Malcolm and Simon Boyle and Dot, the artist formerly known as a non-violent extremist, and Reality Chat as Peter is in the room, and Dean, hello Dino, and Society of Spectacle as Gary's in the room as well, and Helicopter Pad, hello, and yeah, I scroll down, hello to everyone in the chat room. I will start. I want to try and get through this without rattling on for too long like I often do, because I think hopefully, you know, if you guess the kind of double meaning that I was weaving into that use of language in the title, I think it, you know, it sort of speaks for itself, hopefully. But I did, you know, said the word interesting a lot tonight, that using that non-word, supposed non-word. But I thought it was very intriguing. There's another version. Yeah? It was intriguing of how you could quite easily create that double meaning using the same phonetics. Often a lot of what I try to point out about the English language is that phonetics base of how we communicate with each other in this particular part of the world happens to be part of the geography of the planet that has a particular nation state imprinted on top of it, that at some points in history had the ability to spread this particular form of communication far and wide, such that it becomes, in effect, it is the world's common language. Even though many people will, you know, argue and not like that, that's just the reality of it. At the moment, things can change. You know, Mandarin may very well overtake English. It is already the most used language in terms of the number of speakers but it's not yet the same kind of reach and uniform use as English. But it may get there soon enough, this century, more likely, maybe even within the next 50 years. Other languages as well, such as Punjabi, will become much more common, widespread, and used by many people. People will be required in many ways to be somewhat multilingual, even though I think we will eventually, in a kind of Blade Runner style, we'll end up with a mongrel world language that will be a mixture of various things, and in the modern context potentially will include things like symbols, emoticons, stuff like that, where it is easier to convey multiple layers of meaning in one single imagery, like Chinese calligraphy or other versions of hieroglyphic writing styles, pictographic writing styles. Anyway, yes, phonetics. And there's another interesting or intriguing little addition into that. And this is just a play on modern English, because the meanings of the bits of words that I'm playing with wouldn't convey over the centuries, because the meanings have changed and stuff like that. But phonetics. Is this form that we communicate with when we used to use a lot more body language and grunts and ticks, almost like ticks. There's a lot of this in the modern world, of people who've got some kind of spasmodic, uncontrollable physical reaction. Sometimes you can spark or trigger somebody's tics by what you say to them or the message you convey to them. You want to see somebody's eye twitch in their frustration, or you see them, getting all tense and reacting in that kind of way. But I thought that was also interesting, that phonetics. And yeah, please don't forget where the root of that all comes from, all the way back to the Phoenicians and the early days of the forming of what we're told is, the track of history, the rise of civilizations and the forming of nation states and empires, blah, 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 blah. Which, sorry, I'm just dipping into me tobacco tub, which constitutes potentially only about 1% of the entire history of Homo sapiens sapiens. I've said this many times in the past. People are so obsessed with the last few thousand years, the last 2,000 years in particular, and the history that's taken place within those few thousand years. And yet, even according to the scientists' own arguments and evidence, we as human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, has been around for around 200,000 years. So that means the last 2,000 years, that's 1% of the total time that we've been on this planet. And yet we're supposed to be totally obsessed and fixated with only the history of the last couple of thousand years. 1% of that time. You need to expand your thinking, extend beyond the limitations of the winners who write the history that you're then forced to read and regurgitate. So, yeah, the phonetics of the language. Sense or sheer. What letter are you going to put at the end? Maybe, hopefully, a lot of people, I think a lot of the people who come and listen to me ramble and rant are probably more than well aware of a lot of the stuff that's going on at the moment that is alluded to by my mangalization of language, playing with those phonetics. Censorship could also have another layer of meaning. Do you mean ship out? Ship it away somewhere else? Is it sense, or is it something that you get rid of? You ship it off somewhere else. But the other potential spelling of that last word in the sentence, if you use a T at the end of that word, sense or shit, is this sense or is this shit? Things that are sense are things that you ingest. Yeah, we all ingest stuff, whether we like it or not, whether we choose to be a particular style of consumer. Yeah, I'm not getting into the argument about meat eating and vegetarianism and veganism and whatever else, mineralism, chemicalism. Maybe you only ever consume chemicals. But we all ingest things. We're ingesting the air around us. We're ingesting the fuel that we use, the sustenance of food and water, or liquids that we intake, blah, blah, blah. So it makes sense to be ingesting stuff because it keeps us going. Yeah, the way you keep existing in this realm, in this physicality, this experience of physicality, is by ingesting and transforming other packets of energy. But in doing that process, and this is true, I think, of the entirety of the natural world, even black holes, even though we may not be able to perceive them or really comprehend them properly yet, there's no way they can say they can really explain them properly yet, if they even exist, or maybe it's something other than what they're describing. But the point being, even in their own theoretical explorations of those kind of things, they discover that, well, actually, they operate pretty much like a washing machine. They draw material in and they release material back out again. So they're not like this never-ending bottomless well where everything goes to disappear. It's not that. That doesn't seem to be what's happening. And if you look a bit more to the fringes of the standard model of the status quo of academic science, you will find alternative theories that maybe help explain, or at least explore and potentially look for a comprehension of some of these things that are going on. And it is more likely that black holes, if they are what they claim, are some kind of link or bridge to somewhere else, like I think commonly referred to as a Heisenberg bridge. But I don't know whether a lot of that kind of terminology is just a fantasy creation just to keep people entertained with their theoretical physics and stuff like that. They don't know, but potentially there are theories that can posit those ideas and present some good argumentation and some evidence to suggest that. Yeah. So my point being, you ingest things, you process them, you transform them into energy that you require, whatever your form is, be you an animal, a human, or a planet. You take in energy and you transform it into something that is useful to you, and anything else gets expelled. Everything else is shit. If it's not sense, it's shit, and you pass it by. You're moving along that linear line of time and you're ingesting things. Think of the little caterpillar working his way along the edge of the leaf. He's following that line of time, ingesting and excreting, taking in what sense for his form, or her, or its, transgender caterpillar. It's going to be a butterfly one day. But he's taking that in, ingesting it, processing it, and getting rid of the crap, getting rid of the shit. Yeah, the shit is not useless in and of itself. It's just not useful stuff for his form, for its form. Yeah, so is it sense or shit? Is it sense or shit to you? And the reason, I suppose I should point out, because I often talk about things that have happened within the last week or so, or within recent time, and try to point towards some of the ways I feel there are connections to bigger chunks of information, or longer tracks of time, or larger concepts beyond the short eyesight fixation of detail that the system prefers people to be stuck in. Because if you've got a unfortunate that we end up using the goldfish as the example for a lot of this kind of stuff. But if you have the attention span of a goldfish, and they keep putting distracting little plastic treasure chests in the aquarium with you, you will keep swimming round and round that aquarium constantly in the illusion that you've just been given something brand new. Because you see the little plastic treasure chest, oh, a treasure chest, and then you swim round, or you go all the way around the aquarium, you come back again, go, oh, a treasure chest, never seen that before. Because your attention span only lasts long enough for you to do one circuit of the aquarium. Yeah. I know I'm being facetious and whatever, but just to make the point about the reason why they want people preferably to have a short attention span and to be constantly stumbling forwards in a confusion of not knowing what's happened next because they can't remember what happened just the other day, so that they can't put the dots together, as other people like to call it. And they can't link the long arc of the agendas because they're getting so obsessed into the little details of the bits of cheese that get put in front of them one step after another. So they saturate the media with distraction that changes day by day, week by week. When they brought in 24-hour news, that was just brilliant for them because it was like one thing after another. Every 15 minutes there's a news story, a news story, a news story. But if you watch it for long enough, like I did many years ago when it first started coming in the late 90s, I got somewhat addicted to watching multiple news channels all at once. Almost 24 hours rolling news from different channels, all going on at once. But you soon start to realize that there are repetitious patterns. And in the repetitious patterns, you get to hear the propaganda. Because in the white noise chaos of the mass of information that's moving around out there, that all information, not just the stuff that's coming from controlled streams or whatever, just think of that chaotic white noise of all the information moving around. A lot of that will be like background noise because they're individual little bits of sound all going off separately. But when you get a chorus, a unification of multiple voices all singing the same thing, it starts to stand out from the crowd, as it were. So when you're hearing that noise, that background noise of the chatter of all that information moving, the propaganda is the louder, repetitive voices that you hear being shouted out across the top of everything else. So that longer attention span, you start to see those patterns, and the repetition that is used for mind control starts to stand out more, because propaganda is just an attempt to control people's thinking, so mind control. So recently, this year certainly, the increase of pressure against the movement of information and who is and who is not allowed to speak and what they are allowed to speak about has cracked down more and more and more over this year. As the year has gone on, it's got the crackdown has got stronger and stronger and stronger. Recently, we got to the point with, I think it was either last week or the week before, Facebook shutting down more than 200 pages. I think it was something like that, around 200 pages. I'm not getting stuck in the details here. You can go and look up this kind of stuff for yourself quite readily. So I'll just keep moving from the details. But they shut down just overnight, like the flick of a switch. They just deleted people's pages, including many pages that had multiple thousands of subscribers, followers, or friends. It's Facebook, isn't it? So I think they call them friends, those contacts. The thousands of contacts that people had on their pages, all that just instantly severed. That's one example. And then on the screen, I'm screen sharing a story, which thanks Tony for the link to this. I did hear other people mention it, but yeah, it's good to grab the link just to show it. So it's a reference point as evidence for people, like I said about the Facebook stuff. If you want to look further into the details and stuff like, you can just follow that reference point and go and look it up for yourself. I don't like to just spoon feed people everything, because then it comes with an element of bias because you're accepting it from me. No, don't. Go and look into stuff for yourself. But yeah, this one is another example. This is an article on Breitbart. I'll just read it out in case people aren't seeing the screen. An article on Breitbart website titled "The Good Censor. Leaked Google briefing admits abandonment of free speech for safety and civility." Yes. So now maybe, I'm guessing people would have figured it out. But now maybe it really will make more sense of why I put the title the way I did. Sense or shit? Is it shit or ship? Sense or ship, or sense or shit? Is it censorship or is it sense or shit? You decide. Is this shit or is this sense? Does this make good sense to you? Or is it shit? Is it something you need to excrete and move on? Yeah. Never stay longer than, never stay in one place after you've excreted. That's why we have flushing toilets, so you get the excretion to move so that you don't have to. It's one of the reasons why older cultures were nomadic. Once you've filled up the midden pit, you just bury it and move further down the plains, camp somewhere else. But this article just talks about the, as it says in the title, the leaking of a Google briefing, which includes some video clips that I've seen floating around as well of the different Google reps talking about this stuff. But talking about how not so long ago they had a meeting with the Google chiefs all got together to have a meeting to talk about how they were basically going to be the good censor. It's like, oh, well, we've got to censor these people because they're talking about naughty things, but we don't want to censor the nice people. We've got to be a good dictator and only kill the naughty people who have the wrong kind of mustache. And I'm being deliberately facetious to try and point out the comedic flaws, because they have to be comedy, because you have to laugh at them, because otherwise they'll drive you crazy. But the logical flaws in the argument, once you begin censorship, who decides where you draw the line? I think really it comes down to you as the individual. You decide for yourself. Therefore, an outside body does not have the right to do that for you. Do you have the right to stop anybody else from looking or listening to or reading about something that you yourself don't particularly like? No, you don't. So if you don't have the right to do that, you cannot give that right to a third party to do it on your behalf. There's a lot of stuff in this world. There's a lot of information that I don't think is nice or pleasant or helpful or healthy. It's not good for us. There's a lot of information out there that is caustic. It is unpleasant in many ways. And there's a lot of voices out there that I really don't want to hear, that I don't like to listen to, that I will not, I do not support in any way. I don't give my back into them. I don't, put my energy into what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure you've all heard this kind of stuff so many times, and you probably thought it yourself so many times as well. There's loads of that out there. But that doesn't mean I want to censor everyone. I don't, because I don't think it works. It's like prohibition. It doesn't work. If you stop people from talking about something that they're concerned or interested about, all they do is go somewhere else to talk about it. So in effect, you drive it into the shadows. You drive it underground. You drive it into the secluded little secret parts of the world where people will start to feel that they are excluded by everybody else because they're forced to come into this private little enclave to talk about their chosen subject or whatever. And as well, hopefully you'd see how this links in with secret societies and the system's hierarchical need to control information. Because by controlling information, you control knowledge. By controlling knowledge, you control people. If you're in charge, if you're the ones who live in the life of luxury through the effort of everyone else, you don't want everyone else to have the knowledge you have, because if they do, they would collapse your pyramid, and you only have that life of luxury because you're sat on the pinnacle of the pyramid. So if the pyramid suddenly becomes flat and everybody is equal, you no longer have the life of luxury. And that's putting it in a really simplistic fashion of supposedly people in charge only do this because they want money and they want stuff and all that usual kind of trappings, That's part of what they feed out to the general public as well. Is like, this is what you should want in life. You should want a great big house. You should want 5 Ferraris and loads of money, boats and hoes. That is what you should aspire to. And then that way, when people look up at the pyramid and see the people who do have those kind of things, they feel jealousy and envy and greed and desire and all those kind of caustic and destructive elements of the human experience, or just the experience of this existence. And that then gives them little hooks, little sticks to drive and steer people with, so that you can then steer the mass of people so that you can remain in power and sit on top of that life of luxury, because everybody else is chasing what you have. I know it's a big picture, and I'm putting it in a very simple, generalized way, but that's a lot of what they try to persuade people of. That's what they want in life. So censorship is just as bad as prohibition, and there's been quite a lot of it recently. It's been building up, and it's not going to stop yet. Now we get to the well, I don't think there's much else I can really mention about that article. The good censor. Censorship is not good. So it's an oxymoron in the title. The good censor makes no sense unless you're trying to be an apologist for a tyrannical control system. You're like the apologist for the dictator. It's like, oh, well, he's a benevolent dictator. He only kills the people who've got wonky mustaches so that we can all look beautiful because we all have perfect trimmed mustaches. We don't want those people who look a bit scruffy. What's scruffy? What do you mean scruffy? So, oh, well, anything that doesn't fit into this pre-designated, this style, this uniform, this fashion that we say is the one that you should all have. Again, projection onto others. I might cough, so I'll apologise in advance if I don't hit the mute button in time. But now that I've set fire to my herbage, I'll probably cough. Maybe. Grab my notes again. Right, okay. I mentioned the Facebook purge. I think I did notice as well in the chat, Ron put in 800. So I'm guessing you mean there was like 800 pages. If that's what you're referring to, thanks. I thought it was only a couple of hundred, but 800. Yeah, and I think it will keep rolling. There will be more. And something that I mentioned, I'm not sure if I talked about this when we were broadcasting live or whether I only said it while we were chatting off air. I think there's a lot of channels, web pages, whatever platform people are using, however it's designed, like Twitter account page, whatever. But there's a lot of those channels. I refer to it as channels because I do YouTube mainly, so it's a channel on YouTube. There are a lot of channels that have been shut down that are not big, loads of numbers, big channels, mainstream channels or whatever. So for a lot of them, people are just not noticing. because it's hidden in that background noise that is drowned out by the circus cacophony of the mainstream output, the channels that are trending and that are promoted, that are shoved down people's throats. They occupy most of that bandwidth of people's attention. Yeah. So I think many people are not realizing that there are literally hundreds or thousands, more likely, because I'm only seeing it from my personal subjective perspective of my interactions with YouTube and other pages. Yeah, you times that by other thousands of people doing similar to myself, there are literally thousands of channels getting shut down, and thousands of websites are just disappearing because it's happening in the background while people are distracted by the shit on the mainstream media. They're not seeing the sense of what's going on. They're just obsessed with looking at the shit that they've just done. And so, oh no, I've just done a big shit. Trump's just done another big shit. Let's everyone go and poke it with a stick. You know, is it mushroom-shaped shit? You know, like he's supposedly, yeah, whatever. I won't get distracted into that crap. Mention the Facebook purge and the Google, the good censor. And these are just two examples. The same kind of thing has been happening on other platforms. Many sites and channels are getting shut down without people noticing, because either they're only little channels, or, you know, even if they're a bigger channel, it's not being noticed because of the sheer chaotic melee of what's going on. There's so much stuff going on that it's happening in the background for most people. And yeah, that brings me really to the biggest cliche, considering I was just talking about, you know, censorship just doesn't work. It's counter to your benefit, even though there is stuff out there that is not pleasant. There's plenty of stuff out there that you won't like, you won't agree with. You won't want to listen to people talking about those ideas because they're abhorrent to you and stuff like that. Even so, censorship does not benefit you in the long run. And the classic cliche I was going to refer to was the Pastor Niemeyer quote: first they came for the, and then insert your subgroup here. Yeah. First they came for the conspiracy theorists, but nobody spoke out because I wasn't a conspiracy theorist. Yeah. First they came for the whatever, you know, insert your name here. A lot of the time with cliched phrases like that, and what many people feel are glib platitudes. I've spoken about this many times in the past. I haven't mentioned it for quite a while, so I thought it was a good place to add it in again. I feel one of the biggest reasons why they end up becoming cliches, cliched phrases and stuff like that, is because they hold an element of truth that people feel guilty about being reminded of. So when you trot out a cliched phrase and you see people's reaction, like, oh, well, not that again. I heard that so many fucking times. It's like, well, does that mean it's not true just because you're fed up of hearing it? Or are you fed up of hearing it because you know it is true and you still haven't really addressed the contents of the truth that it carries? It makes you uncomfortable to face up to that truth, or you're not prepared to deal with it yet, or whatever your excuse. Your sense of guilt, your sense of annoyance and defensiveness at being reminded of this truth reveals that you're frustrated with the reality of the truth in the content of the cliche that's just been given to you. You know, first they came for the whatever subgroup you feel you belong to or that you could define. You know, first they came for the beanie hat wearers, and nobody spoke out for me because the rest of you don't wear your beanie hats. You know, it's been colder today, so, you know, I wrapped up and put my hat on rather than turning the heating on, so it saved money. I'm not feeding the machine extra money just because I want to stay warm. You know, I'll do other ways to stay warm. And do a bit of chair exercise. Yeah. Do some chair dancing. But anyway, yeah, that cliched phrase, if you apply it now to the situation that's been ongoing for quite a while and it's been building up now over this year, such that it's becoming painfully obvious to many of us, and I'm using the collective there because I know there's many people who've been talking about this for a long, long time, but now it's manifesting, really, really, truly manifesting. This is not like it was back in the 90s where there'd be bits of censorship here and there, but in general, people had the free information available on the internet. And it's not like it was 10 years ago where, yeah, there was more censorship, there was more monitoring of your activity and the movement of information online, but you could still, most things you could talk about, you could share stuff, you could pass on info, and it was moving, maybe a little bit restricted here and there, but now those walls are coming in and coming in and coming in to such a point that even the mainstream populace is now well aware that they're being watched, that they're being surveyed by their own governments and by the governments of other countries. You know, they might still be under the delusion that, you know, they've got to worry about an enemy outside of their country, like the, you know, or it's the Russians did it, or it's the Chinese, or it's the other, you know, the outside of their realm. Their realm is still good. Their government doesn't do naughty. We're the righteous people. We're the righteous ones. We're the ones that are always good and okay, and yeah, we're doing it right. They're still stuck at that point that they can't realise that what applies to other countries, what they're shown about other countries, is just as applicable to the place that they're living in. Yeah, 99.9% of the time, what you're told about the bad shit that's going on in other countries is applicable to here as well, to where you live. There's very, 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 very few places on the world that aren't in one way or another embroiled and intertwined into all the crap that's going on. So if the Americans are doing it, then we're probably doing it as well. If the Saudis are doing it, we're probably doing it as well. So yeah, it's a cliche. First they came for the whatever group you belong to. Eventually they will come for the individual, but they will apply a label to the individual such that it gives them justification to shut down that individual. So we're coming for you because you are a Islamist. Yeah, that's one of the favourite ones here in the UK. Yeah. So you're an Islamist, or you're a jihadist. Yeah, or we're coming for you because you're a neo-Nazi, or we're coming for you because you're a homophobe. You know, a lot of this is very much the conservative side of the left-right political spectrum game, but that's just the current flavour. It is slowly changing. It is slowly pendulum swinging back, so that now they're still using the term popularist. They still can't, on the whole, admit to the reality of what they're terming popularist are right-leaning in that political spectrum game. But eventually they're going to become more the dominant, and the other side will start becoming the pariah. So the socialists, the communists, the whatever, you know, I know there's a lot of that already, but I mean, in terms of the dominance of power structure, at the moment, the majority of the power structure is still in the hands of what would be normally described as a left-leaning political ideology. But that will slowly swing back, as it is already. It's already, you know, in progress. They are processing that. You know, soon the shit will be excreted. You don't want to be excreted, because otherwise you end up on top of a pile of shit. And the rest of the world moves somewhere else because they don't want to look at their shit anymore. Censorship doesn't work. Prohibition doesn't work. Part of my reasoning when I was doing this kind of stuff, with the way I've been doing it in its most recent incarnation anyway, the Excalibre, rather than like before I was doing the virtual shamanizing, That was the one previous to this. With the virtual shamanizing, I was trying to help people get past the fixation on duality. That, yeah, there's a hell of a lot of bad news out there in the world, but there's also a hell of a lot of good news. So I often presented the show in that kind of split dualistic sense. I'd do the first half, the first hour of the show, I'd just talk about all the bad shit that's going on. And then in the second half of the show, I'd talk about good stuff that's going on and all the potential possibilities for making things better. Yeah, so doing that kind of, step out of your dualistic thinking and start looking towards what actually makes better progress rather than just fixating on the bad versus the good, the left versus the right. Anyway, yeah, with this, I felt that it became more relevant to me that it was about empowering the individual, because a main part of the problem is that centralization and groupthink effect, the tribalistic effect, where you can empower a group of people, but then all an enemy needs to do is debase the individuals within that group, and the group itself falls apart because the group identity is a non-real thing. It's an ephemeral thing. It's an idea, a concept, a group mind, potentially, possibly. And it is the strength of that group mind that keeps it sustained. And the strength of the group mind is only sustained by all the individuals that make up the group. So if you want to make an idea, an ideology, or just a truth that has the strength to stand up against the barrage of the bullshit from the system, then you don't just make the group strong, you have to make every individual strong within the group, so that then an individual can stand completely on their own and still be strong enough to stand up to that buffeting, the storm of the system projecting their bullshit at them. Think of the grouping of people all linked together. If each one of those people is capable of standing on their own anyway, then once they actually link up, you will have an unassailable wall of people. So if you want to hold your ground, talking about a certain chunk of information or a truth or ideology, whatever it is, then it's the strength of every individual in the group that matters. So I came at this with the idea of it's worthwhile getting people into that the reality beyond the duality of the separation of the individual and the group. We work symbiotically in both. We are in both worlds at the same time. I am an individual sat here talking to a camera, but at the same time, I know that there are lots of other individuals that are linked in one way or another to this conversation. So I'm not here on my own. Yeah, so it's both at the same time. I'm an individual and I'm part of a collective at the same time. To getting people to have that sense of self without being ignorant to the reality of this shared experience that we're all part of. That requires people to be individually empowered to find themselves again so that they can stand on their own feet in one way or another. So I was just thinking of Jason. He said he got his leg going. He's been practicing his walking, so he's going to be dancing soon enough. It's cool. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully you get the analogy, the metaphor when I say standing on his feet, standing on your feet. The more individuals that have the ability to look at information for themselves and decide for themselves if it is sense or shit, that's where the real power comes from. That's real strength. Not an external authority who wrote on a bit of paper 10 centuries ago that something is sense or shit because the authority says so, and you just read it out, memorize it, and repeat. No, can you actually comprehend what is contained within that statement? Do you actually comprehend it? Does it make sense to you such that you are connected to it, you are at one with it? If it does, great. But can you actually do that? if all you're doing is repeating it because some authority gave it to you and told you to do so, who told you that you would be stronger being part of a team, don't worry about understanding it, comprehending it. No, just repeat it and join up with your buddies, be part of the team and repeat the chant, repeat the chant. That's not strength. That's weakness. And this is, for many people, I know there can be made the argument that a lot of what I'm talking about is a principle of fascism, of the fasci. In some ways it is, because the bundle bound together becomes stronger than the individual stick or reed. But really, to me, it's about making every stick or reed or individual strong to themselves. Then when you get them together, like I say, that's real strength. So the reason mentioning that, helping people to discern through this bullshit, or to at least pick their way through it so that they can start finding the path for themselves, and then they begin their own process of self-discovery or becoming aware or awakening or learning or whatever you want to describe it as. It is that process of self-educating, finding out for themselves and making their own decisions and finding things that is good and useful for them, healthy, so that they become foundation blocks to build upon. That individual then slowly, bit by bit, incrementally, even if it's a slow progress, they get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. This thing, I'm referring to the whatever it is, system thing, call it whatever you want, has had thousands of years to get good at persuading people to go the opposite direction, to externalize all their abilities, all their skills, all their knowledge, and all their authority to others that can then be sublimated into this metaphysical thing that supposedly is not truly embodied in any one individual. It's just this amorphous thing that exists outside of us. That outside space beyond us is useful for our ability to carry out reasoning. We require the ability to make use of that conceptual space, non-physical. It's just all in here, but you use that as like a space to do your speculation in your creative thinking, your calculating, and then you see what potential results come out of it. I've spoken about that many times before. A lot of what we do in general life is project into the future, look at possibilities of what might happen if we go a particular route, and then we decide, based mostly on past experience or learned knowledge, whether we choose one route or another based on those probabilities of what might happen. If I go that way, am I going to find the ice cream truck so I can get an ice cream? Or if I go that way, am I going to run into a gang who hangs around on the street corner who might want to mug me? Balancing probabilities of which route you choose. You're doing that constantly. General everyday life involves that kind of process. So if you help people learn and get better at those kind of skills, those kind of abilities for themselves, that makes things stronger, makes the whole thing move forward with more truth. Sorry, message popping up, dinging at me. Strength within the truth itself, if that makes sense. They can carry the message unto themselves, like the Gandhi quote, even in a minority of one, the truth is still the truth. It's just a matter of being able to discern the truth in the first place. Now, this brings me back nicely, happily, to the main title again. Now somebody else is making that decision for you. And at first, it seems like a good idea, because there is a lot of crap out there. There's a lot of nastiness out there. There's a lot of unpleasantness out there. There's a lot of people that just want to shout shit at each other. They just want to abuse each other. I don't want to listen to that. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to see it. But that's what they're doing. It's not what I'm doing. It's not how I treat people. It's not how I want to interact with people. I know I get a bit passionate sometimes, but I'm not abusing people. But that's there. If somebody else decides that they're going to make sure that I never have the opportunity to see that kind of stuff, I've got to sit here and think, well, okay, are you doing that actually because you want to protect me? Or is there, even though it's stuff I feel I don't like, is there something in what those people are doing or saying that I can learn from? I think I did learn from that kind of stuff many years ago when I was a little kid. I learned that I don't like that. When people treat each other like that, it's not nice. So I'm not going to do that. Isn't that just one of those simple lessons of life that we all pick up along, most of us pick up along the way? You know, in one way or another, it's either passed on to us by our parents or our peers that we're interacting with, etc. But I don't want somebody else deciding for me what I can and cannot look at, listen to, read, etc. Once that process starts, at what point do they draw that line? And I think what we've been seeing, certainly in recent months and over the last year or two, is they've been gradually pushing towards the actual infrastructure that they want and the social acceptance of what they're doing. So now there is Big Brother. You know, for so long I've ranted about how George Orwell was not writing about some distant future that might happen one day. He was using a science fiction setting as a disguise, as a vehicle for him to put a story out there that was about what's happening now today, what was happening in the time that he wrote the story. So people talk about Big Brother as, oh, it's coming, it's over the horizon, it's nearly here. No, it's already here. It's already been here for a long time. The only difference is how far they pushed that line. How much is being excluded from you? How much are you being excluded from everybody and everything else? Now they're pushing it and they're pushing it and they're pushing it. And over this year as well, I've mentioned a few times, there's something about this year that has made me say Phoenix, 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 Phoenix. I know there's links to things like the Economist cover of the digital currency, which might still very well happen. I know some people have been talking in particular about this month, the 10th, because that's what is on that image on the Economist cover. That could just be the storyline that they're feeding us. So they want everyone to get all upset at the moment during this month because of that one picture. Yeah. If it was just that, I'd be happier to leave it on the shelf in that fashion of they're just messing with people in that kind of way that they often do. They're giving them ideas to fixate and worry about. But there's so much other stuff that has gone on, certainly this year and within the last couple of years, that all add into this. They're getting ready to enact a change in society that is going to be on a scale that people of my generation will not recognize it. It will not be the way we used to live, as the Mayan prophecy goes. Yeah, when the change comes, you will not be able to live the way you used to live. It will be the end of the way you used to live. Not the end of the world, just the end of the way you used to live. The old paradigm is over. A new paradigm is being birthed right now. A lot of the conflagration that is going on a lot across the world, and a lot of the conflagration, in other words, setting fire to, setting on fire, that they are trying to spark is going on right now. Like they're trying to divide every nation in two and get them fighting against each other. Do you support the immigrants, or are you a nationalist? Are you against the immigrants? Fight, fight, fight. Are you for Gaza or for Israel? Fight, fight, fight. All these, I'm not going to do a list of them because I'm sure people are well aware. There's all these different elements of where they're trying to insert a divide and then spark off a contest or a fisticuffs between the two sides, and they want it to get worse and worse and worse. And that's why they've been increasing the police state, the militarization of the homeland forces. The police have become another part of the armed forces. It's just that they're not in a different country somewhere. They're here on your own streets, because they know eventually it is going to start resulting in fighting in the streets, fighting between neighborhoods, between communities, over these differences that they've forced upon us. The movement of that information is key to sustaining the lie. One of the tricks I learned many years ago from one of my somewhat unfortunate experiences in life, but you know, things happen in life, you try and learn from them, you pick yourself up, you keep moving. But I learned from living with somebody who was a habitual liar how to pick apart people's lies and how to create situations such that their lies fall apart, or they're brought out into the light in such a way that they fall apart. And one of the most surefire ways to do this is to bring the lie out into public view. So one of the classic techniques is they want to get you on your own. The liar or the manipulator wants to speak to you one-on-one, and they tell you a story one-on-one. There's only you to hear it. And then they do the same thing for the next person. They tell them a completely different story. Yeah, they tell you, so, oh, can I borrow 20 quid off you? I desperately need it. I've got no money for food. I need to buy some food. Can I borrow 20 quid? I promise I'll pay you back next week. You hand over the 20 quid. They go to the next guy, go, oh, can I borrow 50 quid off you, mate? My car's got a puncture. I need to get a new tyre. I won't be able to get to work. Can I borrow 50 quid? I'm good for it. You know I am. I'll pay you back. I don't owe anyone else any money. Please let me. Gives them 50. And they go round and round and round. And that's just one simplistic example of borrowing money and shit like that. Yeah? But they want to speak to you one-on-one. Why is the system so obsessed on getting people to a state where they've got a screen in front of their face such that the only person they're interacting with is the state or the system? They might not be directly interacting with the system, but they have to go through the system as a middleman to interact with whoever it is that they are actually interacting with via the technology. So at the moment, I'm talking to you, yeah? I can only do that because there is this middleman in between. And this middleman is, no matter their claims to the otherwise, this is a corporatist infrastructure. That middleman is connected into the system of control, the establishment, the state, whatever. So I have to go through them to be able to talk to you. That gives them the opportunity to listen to everything I'm saying and to potentially influence it. In the same way, they want everybody to be in their own little individuated box of information stream, which they control. So they build this box around you, and then they only let into that box information about Trump's latest tweet. So the only thing you know about the entire world is what Trump's latest tweet is. So what do you think would be your reality in your head? Because all you see is Trump's latest tweet, Trump's latest tweet, Trump's latest tweet. You wouldn't be able to talk about anything else because that's all you know of the world. If they get you individuated like that, they can feed you a version of the story that suits you, that they know they have learned from monitoring your activity and how you interact with each other. They'll feed you a version of the story that will make you complacent and believe what they're telling you. But if you pull it out into the light, and this is what I learned to do with people years ago, if somebody's doing, or you get the impression that somebody's doing that kind of thing to you, you create a situation where you say, hang on, mate, you want to come and have a chat with me and the rest of the guys? He's like, okay, yeah, I'll come and chat with you. And then you go, oh, you remember that 20 quid you borrowed off me? Yeah. You owed it me for like months and months and months. You said you'd pay me back within a week. What's going on, mate? And then the other guys had also, hang on a minute, yeah, you borrowed money off me as well. And You said you didn't owe anyone else any money. What's going on here? A lie needs information control. The truth doesn't. The truth can stand on its own under any barrage. The truth is infinite and resilient. A lie is not. A lie only survives as long as the web that is woven to create the illusion is sustained. So if you draw any of those points, any of those little nexus points of the web out into the lie starts to fall apart. So the system is absolutely determined. It is intrinsic. It is a foundation stone to their whole structure that they need to be in control of information and the communication between people, the exchange of information. They've monetized it now as well with the, your data is worth money. Data is the new oil. Long rant. I said I was going to be quicker, but the other things I want to throw into this. Thankfully, so far, I saw the Ian R. Crane clip about Mark Steele's appearance in court. Mark Steele is a guy who's been campaigning and talking about the potential risks from 5G technology for quite a while now. And he was appearing in court to contest a gagging order and was successful. So at the moment, he's able to carry on what he's doing and to bring a lot of the questions bring a lot of the questions to the public conscious, the public awareness about the rollout of this new technology. But that's what's going on at the moment. Let's see how far they allow him to progress with that and how many people do actually take notice of those questions and take notice of the fact, the reality that a lot of the technology is already being installed and set up and rolled out anyway. And classically, this is similar to what's going on with the fracking situation, which I think is probably why, it connected for me when I was listening to Ian R. Crane talking about it. They would rather ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. This is a corporatist attitude. It's like a corporatist maxim. Just do it and then ask for forgiveness afterwards. Just pollute the world and then ask for forgiveness afterwards. Just chop down all the forest and then ask for forgiveness afterwards. As long as you make a profit for your shareholders, that's all that matters. And that's just on that basic, simplistic level of they do it for money. Yeah. So we'll see. While he's campaigning and while he's talking to people about stuff, the companies are already starting to do installations and things like that. So I hope he does get a lot more airspace and awareness about that situation, because it needs to be mainstream. We need people to get over this hurdle. I say we need people, but I think it's worthwhile to keep mentioning this, keep bringing this topic up, keep talking to people about it, because there are so many people that are still stuck in that externalized to another authority. The authority told me that it's perfectly safe. There's nothing wrong with it. We've had mobile phones for years, mate, and nobody's been ill. Oh, what's the rise in brain cancers, lymphoma tumors, cancers in children, and children using smartphones? Oh, no, mate, the government says it's okay, it's perfectly safe, it's perfectly acceptable, as long as you hold it an inch away from your ear. Really? I remember back in the 90s when the mobile phones first came out, and right from the beginning, there were questions about the safety of non-ionizing radiation emitted by this technology. And people said, oh, no, it's perfectly safe, mate. Put it right up to your head. Yeah, get right in there. Whoa, whoa. Oh, I got a brain tumor. Oh, fuck. And then they changed the terms and conditions. Say, oh, no, hold it an inch away from your head. And yet you're still under the belief that the government knows that it's safe, and they're telling you it's okay, it's safe, when a decade difference between, oh yeah, it's perfectly safe, you can put it right up against your head, to, oh no, you got to hold it a bit of a distance away just in case. We're not saying it does cause cancer, but just in case. Are you really still that childish? More people need to be talking about this, and more people need to get over themselves and actually go and look into the technology for themselves. And stop just believing the hype because you love the technology so much. So, yeah, I like using computers, but I don't use Wi-Fi. I have my internet wired in. I don't use the Wi-Fi. Don't have it turned on. Sometimes when they reset the router, it turns itself back on. And I have to go into the control page on the router and turn it back off again. But I do. Yeah, you can still have lots of fun with this technology and not be bombarding both yourself and everybody else around you with that harmful non-ionizing radiation. And there's potentially a lot of other risks as well because of the rare earth minerals and other base metals that are used in making up the technology and the amount of fucking shit that's been done to both people and the planet because you're so desperate to have that little bit of technology. Oh, look at me mini drone. I can sit here in my desk and play and fly it around my desk and take pictures of me grinning face. Oh, isn't it great? Get you a fucking stick and hoop, mate. If you got that level of mentality, that'll keep you entertained for fucking years. Just keep chasing that stick down the road, spinning that hoop. Yeah, sorry. I wanted to mention the Mark Steele thing and the fracking situation. We've got to keep talking about it because otherwise they will just do it anyway and then ask for forgiveness afterwards. And when they poison all the water, it's too late to fucking ask for forgiveness. The same thing with the Wi-Fi technology. It's going to be too late to ask for forgiveness when people are suffering more cancers, when more children are becoming sick because of the saturation in all this shit. It's going to be too late to ask for forgiveness then, isn't it? So you need to be talking about it now. And like I was ranting about, learn about the technology for yourself, please. Don't just believe the hype that because the big companies say it's okay, it must be okay for us because they all love us, don't they? Yeah, right. And in that kind of sense, they all love us, don't they? Theresa May could potentially be facing a backbench coup. They're doing the same as they did with Thatcher, where they're going to now try and shuffle her off. They've got her to do some of the things they want, but it serves the narrative for them to pull her down, and then they'll have a revote, and there'll be no Brexit because there's a change of government, and chaos. Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia, why bother with censorship? Just chop them up, put them in boxes and take them away. There you go. You don't have to worry about censorship of journalism. No, just chop them up and fuck them off. Nobody's going to say anything. They'll still want to sell you weapons. They still want your money. So that big message, that international chaotic stage play has taken another step up, I feel. We're still seeing how that situation rolls out, because at the moment it's still being ping-ponged through the media while the different heads of states are making various, proclamations and statements about it and whatever. It's been ping-ponged for now, but we'll see how it progresses, because that is the kind of blatant on the world stage despicable act that is pretty much undeniable. They'll have to pull out some amazing evidence to dispute what more than likely happened. that should, or will, I should say, rather than should, that will progress the whole situation another step up. They've just gone up a gear, basically. So expect the situation in the Middle East to progress to a worse stage. Meanwhile, I was listening to Steve's show on Saturday, and he was talking, mentioning about, getting caught up in the rabbit hole and being used, possibly, being used by the rabbit hole. And that's why right at the start of my ranting, I was saying about, getting caught in the details. Because part of the reason we have that cliched phrase of, chasing the rabbit, going down the rabbit hole, is it's that idea of you go looking for a bit of information, And rather than just that bit of information, you find yourself tumbling down into this chaotic network of interconnected tunnels all over the place. Yeah, Alice in Wonderland, going into a realm of fantasy and craziness and, you know, surrealist reality. And that's part of where the cliche comes from of, you know, don't let yourself get sucked down into, you know, being distracted by all this shit that's down in that hole. There might be something down there that you can find, but if you stay down there, if you get stuck down there, it will just consume you. You know, you get used by the rabbit hole, as it were. And there's a lot of elements in this environment, in the media in general, where they want people to do that. I mentioned when I was chatting with the guys on Raconteurs on Tuesday, you know, that concept of they send rabbits out into the environment to get people to chase them. They give us things to chew on in this like conspiracy, truth, whatever you want to call it, genre, the skeptic genre, whatever. They give us things to chew on so that we're preoccupied for months arguing about, oh, what does this detail mean? Oh, what about the fact that it's got this on the left at the top and more? And we argue over all those little details. Meanwhile, they're already like 5 months ahead with their plans and they've already got the thing built that you were debating over in the first place. So they use the rabbit holes. You can get used by the rabbit holes, as well as the element of commodification. Again, I mentioned it when chatting to the guys on Tuesday. Yeah, a lot of the rabbits that are running around in this environment are there simply because they generate a buck. People can talk about them endlessly and they stick adverts on the channel and they ask for donations or they sell a book or a DVD or whatever it is. They make money out of it. You know, you do. I'm not saying that all of that is disingenuous. It's not. There are some genuine people who earn a living to do what they do by putting out information, by putting out ideas that they've researched, or, you know, chunks of information that they've researched. But at the same time, you have that commodification of the corporatist system where anybody will try and sell you any old shit if they think they can make a buck out of it. So you can get used by the rabbit hole in that way. You can get misguided by something that the system has deliberately given you to make you run off in the wrong direction, or you can get exploited by people who just want to milk money or energy off you by chasing the rabbit that they throw in front of you. But the one thing that occurred to me while I was listening to Steve talk about that kind of thing was like, well, you, rather than just being stuck in the rabbit hole, you know, like the cliche phrase means, you got caught up in the details and the confusion and all the craziness down in that rabbit hole. And you said, why don't you use the whole rabbit? If you grab one of those rabbits, because you do, you know, you'll find rabbits. It's not always about chasing them and never actually catching them. There is, you know, there's that there as well. Like people who are guilty of things, but you can never quite figure out who it was who fired the shot. You know, like Oswald and whatever, it wasn't him. So who was it? You know, you're chasing the rabbit of who was it? Who shot Roger Rabbit? But if they shot him, they should have at least used the whole rabbit. You know, there's nothing wrong with chasing rabbits. It's the obsession and the fixation and the getting caught up in it that is wrong, if anything is wrong about it. But if you're able to learn something from that exploration, if you're able to gain something from it, even if it is the knowledge that, oh, that's a fake rabbit, you can then pass it on to other people. You know, you can say, oh, you know, don't bother chasing that subject. I discovered this chunk. Here's this reference that proves it was a hoax, or that demonstrates that it's just there to get money out of you, mate. You know? So you can benefit from chasing them even when they turn out to be a false trail. You can learn from following that false trail and getting no result. But if you do catch the rabbit, use the whole rabbit. Don't just use the rabbit's hole. That's like pulling the wool over your own eyes, but it's not sheep wool. But no, use the whole rabbit. You can find a use for every part of it. If you're going to do it anyway, use the whole thing. You know, that's one of the arguments of modern modern consumer lifestyle, especially when it comes to food products. We do consume the whole of the animal, but not in the way it used to be in the past. Now it gets ground into a pulp and just gets mixed into other stuff. That gets then we're then told that that's a food product. And it gets like they did with the Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, CJD. Feeding the animals back to themselves such that it creates a nepotistic gene pool of gradually mutating and destructing nastiness, so that you end up with things like CJD. Now, in the past, you would capture the animal. If you needed food, you'd capture the animal, but you wouldn't just consume the meat. You'd make use out of every bit that you could. Because if you're going to do it, then you at least do it in that way that it's not wasted. You're not doing it just to pick at a chicken wing and then, oh no, I don't want the rest of the chicken. I only wanted the spicy chicken wings. So the animals died just so you can have that little, nibble. No, you use the whole animal. You use the whole, and I'm using it as a metaphorical thing. It's an analogy. I'm trying to, make the point of like, there's plenty of rabbit holes. There's plenty of rabbits to chase. Some of them are unhelpful. Some of them are good. Some of them are nutritious. They're tasty goodness. But use the whole rabbit. Don't just think that you found the whole answer just because you followed one down one bush, down behind some bushes. Maybe I'm not making any sense anymore. I should shut up. It's all turning she. It's no longer sense. It's just she. Sorry, guys. If you're still there, jump in whenever you want.
We're here. We're still here, Cookie. I was going to say, is it sense or shit chasing the rabbit? I don't know.
Are you hungry? Do you need rabbit fur? Do you need tendons for making it? Well, if you need it, then it makes sense. Like my analogy of the caterpillar, you taking stuff in makes sense because it sustains your existence. So sometimes it does make sense to chase a rabbit, because you need that sustenance. But you can't live exclusively of the human body. Modern human body cannot live exclusively on rabbits alone. You'll get sick if you try to live on a diet of nothing but rabbits.
Take what you need and get out.
Yeah, that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
They're tasty. They go really well with garlic, but you can't have that every day because you will get ill.
Yes, you'll be out of alignment with yourself.
Yeah.
That's not good. And this, censorship stuff. I mean, it just seems. I saw that other article as well. You got that Breitbart one, and there's one here on RT, land of censorship, and home of the fake. Talking about alternative voices on Facebook and Twitter's crackdown. No, I was going to say there was a quote as well that I read out ages ago. I saw this a while back, this quote, and it said, censorship reflects a society's lack of confidence in itself. It is a hallmark of an authoritarian regime.
Yep.
And that was said by someone, a Supreme Court Justice, which is probably one of the highest judges in America, that sort of title, and that was Potter Stewart. I can hardly read him. The lights are a bit low.
I should get a job. Because that's basically what I was trying to describe. Of like,
exactly.
If a state needs to censorship heavily, that proves that its populace are weak-minded. Because weak-minded populace wouldn't need that heavy level of censorship.
Yep.
Or maybe, to be fair, because I know people might feel personally offended at that, but it proves that the state is weak. Because the state is in fear of losing the minds of the people that government. So censorship proves that the state is weak. A strong state that was supported by its populace and the favour of its populace would not need to censor fuck all.
Exactly. So the lies that we talk about all the time, this is the whole thing, the uncovering of the truth, getting to the truth. Which like you mentioned before, radiates out. It's there, and lies and things like that are beginning to fall away more recently, and people are looking into things and seeing things for what they are a bit more. That's certainly increased. Whether people want to deny it or not, or say that, or switch off from it, but it's certainly happening. People are questioning a lot more. And the stuff you mentioned towards the end there, 5G and fracking, well, yeah, we still need to talk about those things. And
Well, so in talking about censorship, I thought it was very relevant to, in particular, mention the Mark Steele case, because he has in effect been exonerated. Yeah, the gagging order has been refused. So he's the opposite of censorship. Yeah, he's been allowed to speak, which is sort of like, to me, I felt I've got to put that in because it's very relevant to a lot of what's going on at the moment.
Yeah, and other places I saw a video from the Conscious Resistance channel, and that guy called Derek Bros, is it?
Derek Bros, yeah, he's quite cool, and he puts out a lot of good stuff. And his little book is quite good. If you haven't read it, I got a PDF of it ages ago when he first put it out, and it's worth a read. And yeah.
Well, if you check, there was a video he put up just the other week, a few days back, and it was I'm not sure when it was, but he appeared at a hearing at their local council hearing, in the county hall sort of place, and he came up, and it was like a public speaking thing where the public, I suppose, or you could book I'm not sure how it works out there, but you could come and speak anyway if you had questions.
A town hall.
Yeah, like a town hall meeting with all of the, people from the committee and all that, with all their sort of way that they speak, and stuff, where they, and so allowed so many questions. But if they asked questions back, I think he got an opportunity to speak a bit longer, it seems. So, and he was mentioning all about the 5G and the health and safety concerns about it and stuff. And they were all interested in a sense where some of them were not informed and didn't know. And it looked like that was a positive, thing. And that's somewhere in Canada, I think he's based, is it? Somewhere, Toronto, is it? That's the one, yeah.
I think he might be in America, in USA. I know he goes up and down the country. I think he's been into Canada, but I think he himself is based in the USA.
Houston, Houston City Council.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, check that out because it's
cool.
again just bringing awareness. Again, it's happening all over the. It's not just in the UK. Every the USA and Canada, Australia, Europe, or here in the UK. And we just seem to be, they're just sort of steamrolling it out, they're not in, people are just not looking into it, like you say, and there's not that awareness about it. And they go back to the sort of 4G or the mobile phone stuff back in the day where you mentioned about the, non-ionizing radiation, stuff, and that's not gone away. That's never gone away, and that could all be part of the rise in the cancer rates, which we've seen over the last 20 odd years, where more and more people, have cancer.
Yeah, and other ailments as well, potentially. Even I'd argue, although I'm basing it only on stuff I've seen presented by other people. I'm not a chemist or a biologist or whatever. But basing it on a lot of the stuff that I've seen that's available out there, that kind of information, the way it affects us on a cellular level.
Yeah,
it could also be one of the contributors to things like depression and anxiety, because it affects the processing of the biological body.
Yeah. I tell you, the way that they always tell you what they're going to do, and that is kind of their excuse that you didn't do nothing about it. Well, somebody in the chat mentioned maybe that's why they're legalizing cannabis now, so that more people will have the opportunity to treat themselves against this, because there's going to be a lot more of it. And, I mean, it's a dark thought, but it's not impossible.
Yeah? I do think there is still an element of, how can I describe it? It's almost like a gum jabbar, a test. The gum jabbar, the box of fear and pain that he uses in, Herbert describes in the Dune trilogy. But I'm confident that there is still an element of, there are tests out there which they use to, like, hear kitty kitty to get people to join in with their groups. I mean, in the sense of the overarching narrative of the system, like the various sort of tests that there are to join in with some of the secret societies. They don't blatantly come up to you and say, hey, we're going to give you a test now. Are you ready for your entrance exam to the secret society? No, they just do things, and they want to see how you react, to see if you've got the non-animalistic sentience to do certain things. You know, there is that constant subtle test of prove you're not an animal, prove you're not an animal.
Yeah, like if you join the Masons and I asked you that question, you have to believe in a higher power of God. It's the ones who answer honestly that are never going to get above this degree.
Yeah.
It's the practice that, oh yes, I believe there's a God. Like, you know, when I get the insider dealing information, they're the ones they're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like what I was describing earlier, if you want to discover a lie, bring it out into the light so it can be seen by multiple people.
And that's what's happening more and more, isn't it? That's happening more and more. See it all the time now. You know, the last few years, more people are, you know, seeing what it, you know, and thinking, and like the news is revealing itself. I said this for ages and ages. You know, it's more apparent if you just, you know, if you're not, like I say, too distracted or chasing the rabbit, you know, too far, or believing some crazy flat Earth bullshit or whatever. You know, you know, you're not sort of wrapped up in something that really is taking your eye off the ball, and they're good at doing that, like you said. You know, that's part of their, you know, what they put a lot of energy into to distract you. And that's the short attention span. That's what you said, you know, as well, about that sort of reducing. We said that many times, you know, that's something that I've noticed myself. And people
drags you,
yeah,
it drags your focus, your attention downwards and more towards your feet. And eventually, you know, it sort of flips in on itself, which is what they really want. They want you to be, you know, turned in on yourself, and be obsessed with yourself. That kind of narcissistic, solipsistic mindset they're stamping on people.
That was a good point you made about the introduction of the rolling news stream. Because in a way that was the first scrolling, but the idea wasn't to bring you the news. It was to take you away from yourself. Because in the old days, you know, how often did we're going to interrupt this program for a special live feed from, you know, the big event that's happening. It would happen like twice a year. The rest of the time, you'd shut off from the news and go back and live your life until the next news cycle. So, you know, with the rolling news, they're literally taking you away from your own life. You know, oh, maybe this breaking news story, maybe there'll be something new. And I used to watch the BBC one around a friend of mine's house in Paris. Yeah, he had the 24-hour news, and it was about 20 minutes if there was a breaking story, that you'd go through the whole news cycle, and then they'd come back. No new news on this one. And it just kept you, you know, focused on it. It was the first scrolling Facebook page, really, wasn't it?
It became, like you say, it became addictive, didn't it?
Yeah.
People were hooked on it.
I used to sit there with BBC News on one window, and Sky News on another, and I'd often have like CNN or something. I'd have a USA News channel as well, because I was doing that kind of thing when 2001 happened, when 9/11 happened, and I think that was part of the reason why I was sort of straight out the gate as it was happening. You know, I was like, inside job, this is a fix, there's something wrong here. And I think it was because I'd got so into that zone of I was watching the continuous mainstream media feed. So when things started to pop up, it became more apparent to me. Yeah? It was how I feel as well. I started to be more perceptive of those recurrent patterns in the body of the mainstream media. You know, it was after the fact that I learned things like a lot of the news comes from the Reuters feed and things like that. But yeah, that was a progression of learning. But at the time, I was still I was in that zone of making use of the new technology, the internet, to be able to watch multiple streams of information all at once. So when things happen in that kind of cascade pattern effect, I could see it just roll from channel to channel to channel.
Yeah, I remember when it first came on as well, and it was the start of the sort of digital channels coming out, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That sort of expansion of TV in the UK, that sort of huge explosion of sort of how many because that only just, I say only just, it was sort of late 90s and the early 2000s.
Several years, some point 93, 94, they started rolling out the cable channels.
The cable stuff, yeah. But I remember it sort of being a sort of easy thing to get. I remember it was ITV Digital. Do you remember that back in sort of late 90s, early 2000 time, I think it was.
Yeah.
And they were becoming like these digital platforms getting set up where you just buy these little boxes, plug them in, and they work through your normal aerial. he didn't need the Sky Dish and all the rest of it, you know, because that was a bigger subscription package, as it always is, you know, Sky.
In a way, though, that was like a way of separating the intelligent from the dumb, because I never went through those channels, but everyone was saying, you know, 99 channels are shite. So the wrong news channels was for the intelligent people.
It's still like that now.
It's no different. I mean,
there's like hundreds of channels available, and 80%, 90% of them are just a waste of time.
It's just genres of shite now, isn't it? Just go to whatever you know, whatever.
You like DIY? There's 10 channels that do nothing but DIY.
Yeah, again, it's like, it's just fill your boots time. Is it kids TV as well? That was the big one, you know, with children, because we didn't get it as much, did we? We were limited.
But that's a good point as well, in terms of the manipulating of new minds.
Yeah.
Previous to that kind of technological ability, they were limited in a similar fashion to like what Gary was describing about, you know, the way you'd take in the news. You'd take it in little chunks. And the children's TV was similar. You used to get it in little chunks. And then all of a sudden, thanks to this new cable and satellite setup, it was almost 24 hours kids' TV.
Yeah, and I remember that well. And I thought to myself, even then, when the rise of even the gaming consoles and things, where you're thinking these are getting so much better, so much realer as time went on through the 80s and 90s, where you saw the development of it. You know, the pixels were getting better, the machines were getting faster, everything was getting more real and more, you know, and now we're at 2018, and look what we have, virtual reality, and you know, this is a step to the next, you know, what's called big distraction. It's this, you know, building the, you know, cybernet around us and in you and on you, and you know, that's the sort of way it seems to be going, like you say. And
I found it interesting that I saw a clip from, because I didn't watch the whole thing, I only watched a couple of clips from it, when Elon Musk was talking on the Joe Rogan show. Yeah. The stage play that was, but I saw the clip of him smoking and whatever, and yeah, everybody was like, "Oh, look, he's smoking cannabis on Joe Rogan show." Oh. And then with this all censorship stuff that's been going on recently, as part of that, I saw another clip from that particular discussion where he's talking about the AI. You know, the AI taking over and how it's going to be dangerous and all this shit. You know, supposedly Elon Musk is our savior because he's talking about the dangers of AI. And I'm just sat there thinking, what he said during that little clip was stuff that I've said many times over the years, but now people are hearing it from this authority figure. Yeah, and then of course, you know, the framing aspect of the Joe Rogan shillcast, and the staging of it, and the pantomime.
Yeah,
the fact that they got him to smoke on the show, that was a way of him getting cool points with the younger people, kudos points with a certain demographic that they want to adopt him. Yeah, they want you to adopt him as some kind of iconic techno savior that's coming to help mankind.
Well, all I say about Joe Rogan is it sense or shit to you? That's all I'll say.
He does have some really great guests on, people I like to listen to, but the guy himself and some of the stuff he does like that, is, no, I can't do it. And it's just obvious to me that they've.
Yes. He's flipped 180. I mean, back in the day, he did have something about him. He was,
but that could have just been a setup as well.
Yeah, and he's suddenly taken his big contracts and his whatever he's signed up for, and he's swallowed the jizz, if you like. He's you know, he's playing ball, and he's, you know, doing that, in knowing he's doing that. Well, there you go. That's what it's all about for him.
Brought that up as well. So they were talking about because you mentioned the VR kind of stuff. And he's sort of talking about the tech that's going to happen soon enough, and it's not going to be that far away. It's only going to be a few years away, really, several years maybe. But what he calls the lace, or what other people have described in the past as like jacking in. Yeah, talking about jizzing and jacking. Yeah, jacking in so you can get the pixel jizz straight to your brain. Yeah, his idea on the technologies, he's calling it this lace thing, so it's nothing invasive. Right? You take that on board, that he himself is talking about their chosen approach to the technologies. It's not going to be invasive. It's not going to be implanted in your body, and it's not going to be something that you plug into your body. That should indicate that they do have, and they have been working on, technology that allows them to do the same thing without actually sticking things in you. So they don't need to put a chip in your head anymore. The old paradigm of, don't take the chip, doesn't matter. They don't care if you take it or not. And I've talked before about how potentially that was used as a deliberate scarecrow. One of those rabbits I was talking about earlier, you're given that one to chase because it will keep you occupied and it will take you into a certain demographic that they want you to be corralled into. But the way he mentioned it to me is an indicator that they are working on technology where it doesn't matter if you're plugged in. It doesn't matter if you take the chip or not. Go on, man.
Has anyone seen that Pre-Crime? I shared it, I think, Thursday.
You mean?
It's a documentary film called Pre-Crime.
No.
And it's about how they're running out surveillance things and facial recognition. And I think it was on Vimeo. Actually, I watched it on Putlocker. A documentary, yeah, and it's incredible what they're doing in Chicago, yeah. They're doing these algorithms of people, and even if you've got friends who have been a victim of crime, you might be put on a list of 400 most likely people to commit a crime in Chicago, and they're watching you with a facial recognition videos all the time, yeah. And they've got a similar thing in Paris and Munich, I think, yeah.
I remember we talked about
it's a scary film, man. It's literally like watching one of the Black Mirror episodes. It's called Pre-Crime. The two words joined together. Yeah, I'll put a link in here in the box as well because it's well worth watching. Yeah, although some of it, if you can get a version that's been subtitled, it's better because some bits are in German and French.
Right. Okay. But the other reason I mentioned that whole Elon Musk and whatever thing, the fact that it's not implanted, but they can still do the kind of thing that they're talking about, where in effect they can take you into an augmented reality or a virtual reality. So you don't need to have something put into you. They can give you that kind of imagery or whatever connection. It's like Wi-Fi to the brain.
Yeah, like through light, isn't it, or whatever? Yeah.
That connected to current topic title, what we've been talking about, well, the censorship, shit. If they can go straight into your brain, and what I was talking about earlier about how, if you're in a controlled box, the only thing that you know about reality is what information comes into that box. So if they're the ones that make the box, they get to decide what information you have access to. Yeah.
They're doing already.
If they've got the ability to have systems, technology such that they can give you that kind of brain Wi-Fi connection without you needing to be plugged into anything, then at what point does that level of censorship and them controlling your very perception of reality come into question for you? This is something where I think people are not. And again, why I bang on about this stuff so much is because I think until recently, there's been stuff going on. Yes, it's been building up, but it's only people, who look at this stuff a lot that start to see this stuff, because it takes a little bit of study and time, and you have to watch for the patterns, and you collect the little bits of evidence as they come out, and so you can see the pattern, the modus operandi emerge. But now recently, this stuff has been coming out like a rapid cascade that is just pushing people. They're getting sucked along by the vacuum created by the speed of progression. It's only going to be a few years. If this kind of censorship progress continues, then you're talking 2020, 2021. And here in the UK, we'll have stuff similar to what's already going on in China. I know we've spoken about that recently. Yeah,
social citizens.
And then I'm just pointing out at how you keep progressing that, and you progress it along the technological lines that Musk is alluding to, that we don't care if you don't want to have something plugged into you. We're still going to have this stuff all around you, built into the infrastructure of your society, that can do things like what Gay was describing, that kind of pre-crime shit. So even if you like me, I don't want Wi-Fi, I don't do the Wi-Fi, I'm careful with my phone, it's only for emergencies, I don't use it really. You avoid that kind of stuff by choice. They don't care. There's going to be stuff all around you in your environment, in the shops, on the local high street, in the schools.
Yeah.
Think about that with that 5G connection, the Internet of Things and everything. I don't want to be stuck in that box where the only information I have available to me is what they let me know about, their level of censorship.
Yeah. Well, they're slowly sort of feeding people into it with your Google feed, what they recommend,
Google will know what you want before you do.
And the algorithms on how they work on YouTube and stuff, how they look at what, they give you what you want and the recommended, unless you're looking for something specific, it'll be giving you things in your feed which is similar to my feed, and that I know that for a fact, because there's YouTube that you gets recommended, and you think I had that recommended and you had it too, and so they know they're just feeding certain things at us, and when there's a whole host of other stuff, as we know, there's this one is the biggest platform on the planet for uploading videos, isn't it? YouTube, and what's on there is billions of videos,
So the government isn't like the ravenous bug blatter beast of Troll. If you put a towel around your head and you can't see it, it won't see you. It's not like that, huh?
Nope.
You can't just ignore it and it'll ignore you.
I've talked about it before as well. They don't even necessarily need to see you, because they will be able to track you by your vacuum. Yeah, and I don't mean your thing for cleaning your carpets or whatever. I'm talking about the empty space that will be around you in that digital environment. Because if you're somebody like me who doesn't do a whole lot of that kind of digital living, the location thing on my phone is turned off. I know the system can still see my location, but my location is not broadcast to like Facebook every time I go around the corner to the shop or whatever to say, well, he's now in the shops, or my mates can look, he's in the shops. I don't do. Good night, Gary. Cheers for joining.
Good night, Gary.
Yeah, I don't do that kind of thing, but that doesn't mean that there is totally no interaction with me. There will be certain little points along my life journeys where I do have to interact digitally. So those little snapshots will enable them to trace the vacuum of data as it moves around. So say I go into a shop and I buy something where it's digitally scanned that it's me buying it for some reason. That's a marker point. And then I turn up somewhere else. So they know I've gone from that point to that point, and there's a vacuum of data on all their little sensors in between there and there, because my phone doesn't say location all the time. I know that's, it's a simple example, very simplistic example, but they will be able to monitor people even if they don't take part, unless you're well away from any kind of the interconnected technology. So you'd have to be like living up the mountains in Afghanistan or something.
The majority
of us, certainly in the developed world and all that shit, they'll be able to follow us anyway. Even if you don't take part in all the digital circus game, they'll still be able to follow you. They'll track you.
Yeah, well, they've got better, like I say, data collection things going on now, because even when you have these is it shopping cards, nectar cards or whatever they're called, when you go, or your discount card when you go into the supermarket.
Facial recognition, right?
That's the first
you
thing.
go up to the counter and you pay in cash, but that purchase at that moment is recorded by the digital camera, and if the digital camera is linked into the Internet of Things, facial recognition in the cloud, that will go ping, there he is buying that product.
But what I'm saying is they've already been doing it, like slowly building people up to this kind of, you get a little carrot, you get a little incentive. You sign up with us, give us your name details and how old you are, this type of thing. You fill all this out, and then at the end of the year, when you've spent maybe about £3,000 or £4,000 in there, you know, a year, we'll give you 50 quid. And we go, yeah, okay. Yeah. It's like, it's like I've looked at him back in the day. I was thinking, you know, these guys rip us off big time. And plus, I knew that this was linked into actual shopping habits and things of this nature. And I knew even back then data and things, not so much the way it is now on the internet, but that information's used. You know, they use that stuff and they want to know about you, and then they target you with spam mail. Because back in the day, they tell it to spam companies. That's how it would work. That information would be bought by a spam company. Just said, you know, all that shit that used to come through your door. Now you just get it in a fucking email box now, don't you?
And you still get it through your
And you
door.
still get it through your door, but not as much as it was maybe back in the day. You know, and these things are all linked. So I never wanted to ever sign up for those things anyway. But and then you would only get back, like I say, a very small little, you know,
A
little
fraction
reward.
of a penny in the pound.
Yeah, for what they make as a corporation. As you know, they make vast amounts, and they give
It
you
was-
these little tiny bits back. You know?
It was worse than the Green Shield stamps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's again, it was normalizing people to kind of do that, and they were getting sucked into it because they were happy with a, you know, whatever, a little bit of extra at Christmas, and they were, yeah, but it was normalizing people to keep doing that, keep doing it, and then as the digital era, you know, got more and more in, and everybody was getting more, you know, where we are now, everyone's just happy, and we've kind of almost been drip fed along. It's been a gradual kind of move to this level now, where we're at almost on the verge of a cashless society, where cash will just not exist in say 15 to 20 years time. It just won't be needed. People are being paid in credits, and they're using bits of plastic to flash at machines or whatever it will be. Their face, even as we've said with credit card companies like MasterCard, they were rolling out a facial recognition type system. We mentioned that a year or so ago. I'm sure it's. I don't use credit cards. I don't know if they, you know, I don't go shopping like that. I don't do that kind of shit. But yeah, I suppose if you go to these high-end shopping areas or wherever you are, and you have a credit card, yeah, they've probably got a terminal there sitting there with facial recognition. You just look in there, bang, it's you. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, and they were talking about, like I say, a while back, and you know, like I say, I don't go shopping, so I can't verify this. I'm not being into a high end store. I don't think they'd let me in, but you know.
Yeah, he looks like a troublemaker.
Harrods, no, you're not coming in.
Send in the scoops. I want to, before we wrap it up, I want to mention one other part of this that I think is very relevant, especially when we're talking about that kind of censorship and free speech stuff, and you know, all those usual kind of arguments back and forth. I think, you know, that question of censorship, and I ranted on about how the externalized authority structure wants to take control of that from you so that they can limit your access to information so that you can't figure out what they're up to and stuff like that. Yeah. But at the same time, I think I did mention a kind of like the individual and the collective, you know, the symbiotic too. At the same time, you have your own personal censorship that you do naturally, as well as consciously. There'll be conscious decisions you make to cut things out of your life, but there's also ways that you do it unconsciously, you know, instinctually. I'd say naturally as well, because, you know, like you learn when you're a kid, you don't survive very long if you keep putting yourself in fire. So touching the cooker, you know, when your mum tells you don't touch the cooker, it's hot, and you go, oh God, I need to know, and you touch it, you find out it's hot, you go, right, okay, that's censored from my life now. Yeah, I'm not going to touch that hot thing again because I've learned that it's bad for me. Yeah? So I'm not trying to suggest that censorship, this is being a little bit pedantic and semantic over language and definitions and stuff like that, but we all censor in different ways. We censor things within our own lives. We share some things, we don't share others. We interact with some people, we don't interact with others. You know, we all do elements of what could be called censorship. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to suggest that it is a right or wrong thing in that way. But when it comes to an external authority claiming control over what you do as censorship, you know, they're taking that ability away from you. They're taking that right, that intrinsic inalienable right of existence away from you.
And it shows
That's where it should be questioned then, yeah?
as it says, it shows their lack of confidence. So it shows there's a
Yeah.
weakness, and there's a reason why, you know, we were acting the way we are. You know?
I think it's important and relevant in this time period where they have deliberately engineered situations so that it creates a public acquiescence to the claimed justification that they can shut down certain people. So they've deliberately propagated and encouraged extreme ideas and extreme attitudes so that then they can go, hey, look, everyone, look at this super crazy person who shouts terrible, hateful, crazy shit online. We need to shut them up, don't we, people? Yes, we do.
Alex Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I think it's relevant to sort of put that across. Is like, you know, the concept of censorship in a pedantic semantic definition, we all do it. We all make decisions of what we do include or don't include in our lives. Yeah. But where you should draw the line of ultimate censorship is when somebody outside of yourself tries to enforce a different version of that onto you.
Yeah. Or interferes in someone else's ability to be able to present something to you.
Yeah.
And says you can't do that. It's like, well, why not? It's not hurt. It's not harming. It's just information. It's knowledge. It's whatever I want to present. It's art. It's music. It's whatever. But they step in and do that throughout all of those things.
It's, you know, my attitude changed a lot over the years that I've been doing this stuff online. But one of the things for me that became more cemented as I was going along was that approach that I don't want to shut anyone down. I didn't want to shut Alex Jones down.
No.
I'm glad that his voice has been pushed out of the main to a certain degree. It's been pushed out of the mainstream, and in many other ways, it's been pushed more. Been pushed more into the main focus. But I don't want to shut people down because I think that's the wrong approach, because it is doing exactly what we've just been describing. It's censorship.
Yeah.
It's my version, and I demand that if it doesn't fit my version, everything has to be shut down. No, we can't. I'm saying we're doing that collective thing. So I feel I cannot approach this kind of stuff in that way because it won't work in the long run. So I don't want to shut people down, but that does not mean that I wish to participate in stuff that I think is shit. I don't go and watch the crappy trending videos on YouTube because I think they're awful. I think they're harmful. They're destructive to people in many different ways. So I don't put my energy into it in any way whatsoever, other than putting across the point, like I just have, that I think that stuff is not good for you. So don't do it, people. Yeah. I'm making an appeal. I'm not enforcing something on somebody. To me, there is a big difference. I would ask, I would hope and put my optimism in people learning for themselves. It's like, oh, I don't want to listen to that shit anymore. That guy's just shouting crazy, hateful crap at people. That's not going to help the situation. And they move on of their own choice. And if we do that, just like the system itself, eventually those bad things, as people like to define them, will fade away. Because nobody's feeding them energy anymore. You can't kill an idea, but it can die off.
Yeah, people are not interested anymore.
Exactly.
Lose the interest. It's dead, isn't it? It's
or we've all learned, maybe by hundredth monkey effect, we've all learned that it's not a good idea, so we abandon it and we leave it in history and it dies off.
Yeah. And we learn and we go, well, that doesn't work, does it? So why we're all thinking that? Why do we think that's a good idea? Why do we think that ideology is a good?
Yeah. And that can't be enforced.
No.
That has to be a natural progression of, like I was talking about earlier as well, the individuals make up the group.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a group until individuals, at least two, get together and say, hey, let's do this thing together as a group. Then the group comes into existence. Before that, it's all just individuals. So,
yeah.
Don't believe the bullshit. It's not progressivism either that I'm talking about. Yeah. That's another one of the key phrases where they've tried to appropriate that kind of idea. Oh, you're talking about progressivism, mate, giving up the crappy traditions of the past and moving forward. It's like, no, it's not what I'm saying. Stop trying to stick it into an ism. Fuckheads. Can we have fuckheadism? That's what you're doing. You're fuckheadism. Stop it.
That does exist, yeah. Sure.
That's all right. Okay. Being silly now. So quick hello to everyone in the chat room. Because I'm starting to lose my voice now. I'm getting croaky from ranting too much. And I mean, now scrolling back up, there's quite a lot of chat in there. So I'm going to say a group hello. Just to throw you all in a group together. Sorry, folks, but there's quite a few in the Blazing Stars. Hello, mate. And Alan McVicker, hello. There's one. Cardini, hello. I'm trying to quickly scroll past because I know some people already said hello to at the beginning. So I'll do a quick scroll down. And Gas Mask, hello. If I spot people that I know I haven't mentioned before when I'm skimming through quickly, and if I do happen to miss you out, it's not deliberate. I'm just missing people out by, trying to rush through it by not being perceptive enough to discern all the different individuals from the group mass of text that's in the chat box. How can I talk about doing that when I can't do it myself? Yeah, that's a paradox, isn't it? You're not allowed to talk about paradoxes because if you do, you're an occultist or something or the craziness like that. But, sorry, Dino, hello. Wow, you've been chatting away. I will read it all afterwards. I'm just scrolling through looking at the names at the moment just to see if there's anybody I've missed out. Worcestershire, hello, Worcestershire. I know the Americans have great problems with saying some of our place names. Worcestershire, Worcestershire, Worcester. Paula B, hello. And Steve to Goose, hello, mate. Yeah, the scrolling does get a bit dizzy making after a while, especially when you're trying to do it quickly and focus on each name as it's like. That's what I don't get with people getting addicted to the phone shit, because that's, trying to scroll through looking at all the different. So, no, doesn't that just do you boxing? Like trying to scroll constantly. Like James Owen, hello, mate. Thanks for sharing it round. And thanks again for joining us and giving us your attention for a couple of hours. Raconteur News will be on again tomorrow. We'll be back again on Wednesday night. I know Steve will be on Saturday night. And, there are other shows on as well. So, keep looking. There is conversation about a lot of these topics still ongoing. We haven't all been shut down yet. But please, don't be ignorant. Don't think it's not going to come eventually to knock on your door. I know it's a cliche, but first they came for somebody else. It might be somebody that you radically disagree with, that you don't like their ideas or whatever, but where does that line stop? Because isn't it not now evidenced enough over the last couple of years, all these stories, like I only showed you one example, the Breitbart story, but I mentioned many others. There are now so many examples of how this line is not stopping. It's getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. I know a few people now who regularly get themselves banned on Facebook. They get put on the naughty step for a couple of weeks or something. They're not allowed to post because they posted something that somebody out there got upset about. Yeah. Please don't be ignorant to this stuff. It is progressing rapidly, and as long as we keep communicating with each other, you chat with the people that you normally chat with, and especially when you're talking with them not via these communication things, when you're talking to them face to face, say your family and friends and stuff like that, people in your own community, keep communicating with those people. Because it's going to get harder and harder to do this kind of stuff on here. If we disappear overnight one day,
We'll
Then
find
they've
another
shut us
way.
down. Yeah,
We'll find another way.
we
Yeah,
will try and find another outlet to do
Yeah,
stuff, but just in case, they might shut it down eventually. But
who knows?
we will do something. Anyway, yes, I'll shut up now because I know I'm waffling.
Cheers, Cookie. Anyway, thanks for that.
Thanks for joining in. Thanks to Gary as well, and thanks for listening, folks. We'll catch you again soon. We'll click the button. Catch you.